The film commences with two automobiles speeding down a thoroughfare. One vehicle pursues the other, attempting to compel a female occupant to halt. It appears the individuals in the pursuing car intend to perpetrate a robbery. She promptly pulls to the side of the road, and masked assailants emerge with firearms, ordering her to exit the vehicle or face gunfire. They shatter the window and nearly abduct her, but a well-dressed gentleman passing by intervenes, instructing them to cease their actions. Back away. Hold on a moment. The assailants recognize him and utter his name, Randall Thompson. They exhibit familiarity, though Randall has no recollection of them. He attempts to de-escalate the situation, but the woman suddenly flees her vehicle. One of the assailants shoots her in the leg, and Randall positions himself to shield her. The assailants turn their weapons on him and fire. Randall collapses to the ground. The group exchanges agitated words, taken aback by the swift escalation of events. One individual succumbs to panic, but the shooter discharges his weapon again, fatally striking Randall. While rifling through his pockets, they discover a police identification card, which they seize before making their escape. Across the street, a shop proprietor who has observed the entire incident contacts the authorities. Shortly thereafter, a memorial service is held for Randall. He was held in high esteem for his military service record and his expertise as a private contractor. His daughter, Anna, attends the service accompanied by her instructor, Kara. They observe the proceedings with profound sorrow. Later, Randall's brother, Carl, arrives, much to Anna's surprise. She has no other living relatives, so his presence provides a measure of solace. Anna introduces Carl to Kara, who extends a cordial welcome. It appears Carl intends to remain. As they walk home together, Carl learns more about the neighborhood from Anna. She describes it as a perilous area and that her father consistently stood up to local gangs. She explains that he was merely out shopping when he encountered the perpetrators. Visibly distressed, Anna informs Carl that Randall had always expressed a desire for him to visit, yet he never did. She inquires if he plans to depart once more. Carl assures her that he is committed to staying. Subsequently, while near the school, Carl observes a group of young men harassing a woman. He ascertains her well-being, but she departs without uttering a word. The same youths then accost Carl, attempting to intimidate him. "Are you addressing me?" They assert their dominion over the area and hurl insults at him. Carl maintains his composure and questions whether they are issuing threats. A police cruiser appears, causing them to disperse, but once the officers depart, they return and discharge their firearms at Carl. Carl evades the projectiles and the group swiftly departs. Later, he meets his old acquaintance Joey in a secluded location. Joey once collaborated with Shale, the original interim instructor who now resides in New York City. Carl requests assistance in locating his brother's assailant and ascertaining if the gang was implicated. Joey readily agrees even before Carl offers compensation. "It's good to be back amongst your circle. It's a pleasure to have you." That evening, Carl and Joey convene at a public house to formulate a strategy. Joey states that the shop owner who witnessed the homicide is unwilling to cooperate, likely due to fear. Carl inquires if he identified the shooter. Joey confirms this, identifying the perpetrator as a student from Lantro High School, affiliated with a syndicate known as the Brotherhood. They are distinguished by their hoodies worn backward with openings for the eyes. The store owner adamantly maintains they were high school-aged individuals. Joey emphasizes the urgency of their actions. The subsequent day, Carl visits Kara, bringing her a beverage. She expresses delight at his presence. He inquires about the individual slated to assume Randall's instructional responsibilities. Kara informs him that the institution is seeking a temporary instructor for the most challenging class. Carl expresses his interest, noting his experience in instructing individuals in self-defense techniques. "Is there any impediment to my appointment as a substitute?" Kara hesitates but advises him to obtain the necessary certification, promising her assistance with the application process. The following day, Anna returns to the academic institution for the first time since her father's passing. She is reunited with her closest companion, Danny. Concurrently, Carl arrives at the school in search of the registrar. He encounters Warren Drummond, a mechanic instructor, who offers his assistance. En route, Warren inquires if Carl is the newly appointed substitute for the problematic cohort. Danny walks past and expresses gratitude to Warren, although the interaction feels somewhat peculiar. Within the specialized section, Carl observes that the students bear a greater resemblance to gang members than to scholars. After obtaining a permit, he proceeds toward his assigned classroom, but becomes disoriented. A custodian provides directions. Upon entering the classroom, Carl is met with utter pandemonious activity. Students are engaging in revelry, consuming carbonated beverages, dancing, and engaging in flirtatious exchanges. No academic pursuits are evident. He attempts to introduce himself, but his efforts are met with indifference. "Excuse me, would you be so kind as to lower the volume, please? This is my preferred melody." One student, Dante, requests a reduction in the music's volume. The student complies but voices a complaint. Carl notices a young man with a soda and humorously inquires if he brought enough for everyone. The student responds with an insolent tone, eliciting laughter from the class. I appear to have forgotten my beverage cooler at my residence, Bill." Carl informs them that he is their new substitute instructor. He observes a student with an injured arm and inquires about the cause. The boy attributes it to participation in basketball. Dante jestingly remarks that instruction is similarly demanding. Carl retorts, "Not if the educational framework is robust," then produces a yo-yo and inquires if they are familiar with its function. He elaborates that approximately 400 years prior, in the Philippine Islands, it was employed as an instrument of combat. He then launches the yo-yo, shattering a soda bottle. It served as a weapon. He solicits their acquired knowledge and subsequently advises them against forming judgments based on outward appearances. Furthermore, he stipulates that if an individual brings carbonated beverages, they are obligated to share. The room falls into a state of quietude. Numerous students observe Carl with scrutiny, already contemplating future tests of his resolve. During the midday meal, several students mock him, unaware that Joey is present, documenting the events. "Mr. Parent, someone ought to attend to that parental figure with exceptional care." Within the faculty lounge, Carl encounters other educators. They exhibit signs of weariness and discouragement. One jokingly inquires how Carl is managing in this inferno. Carl states that the students project an aura of toughness, but he remains uncertain of their genuine mettle. Another instructor reminds him that Randall harbored similar sentiments. Observe the outcome of such convictions. Warren enters and interjects, remarking, "If fish can learn to navigate aquatic environments, why abandon hope for these youths? Perhaps that explains why all your pupils are submerged." Although Warren projects an air of arrogance, he extends an invitation to Carl for a promenade. As they converse, Warren questions Carl's rationale for selecting that particular class. He subtly suggests that Carl would have been better served by selecting a less volatile group of students, possibly attempting to dissuade him. Kara approaches and playfully inquires of Warren if he intends to introduce her to the new instructor, feigning unfamiliarity. Elsewhere, Anna encounters Dennis, who is operating a Mustang. She compliments the vehicle and inquires about his financial means to acquire it. He deflects the question and offers her a ride. She accepts. Across the street, Carl and Joel are observing students they suspect are members of the Brotherhood, the individuals responsible for Randall's demise. They follow them to an abandoned industrial facility. Inside, the gang is subjecting an individual to torture. It is the shop owner who witnessed the homicide. Carl and Joel infiltrate the premises undetected and witness the man suspended by his arms, undergoing a brutal assault. Joel inquires if he should intervene. Carl nods affirmatively. The gang leader demands an explanation for the man's disclosure to others that they had perpetrated the teacher's murder, particularly emphasizing their student status. Sobbing, the man pleads for clemency and asserts that he contacted the authorities. The gang intensifies their assault. Meanwhile, Carl deploys a device he has prepared. Joel enters unarmed and admonishes the gang to release the individual or face repercussions. "I intend to escort this man from this location presently. Do you comprehend?" To underscore his point, Carl discharges his firearm, striking one or two gang members in the leg. Joel then directs his weapon at the leader, stating that the subsequent projectile will impact his chest. He will comply. Perceiving the gravity of the situation, the gang leader agrees to release the man. He swiftly unties him, and Joel assists him in departing. Joel instructs them to remain immobile until the red laser targeting indicators vanish, lest they be fired upon. The gang remains frozen as Joel departs with confidence. At their residence, Anna and Dennis are in her room, engaged in an embrace. They harbor mutual affection, but Anna is hesitant to proceed further. When Dennis inquires about her reluctance, she offers a jocular response to evade the question. Abruptly, Carl appears. Anna experiences a surge of panic and directs Dennis to exit discreetly before he is observed. She then proceeds downstairs to greet Carl, who playfully remarks about imparting knowledge of yo-yo history at the school. Anna chuckles. Before departing, Carl conveys his understanding of adolescent challenges. That evening, several students from the remedial class orchestrate a vehicle theft. Mace, the young man with the radio, alights from a friend's vehicle and breaches another. The alarm is activated, but his companion deactivates it. They depart nonchalantly. Joel observes their actions from the shadows. Elsewhere, Carl is spending the evening in Kara's company. They are imbibing beverages and conversing. She inquires about his personal history, and Carl divulges select details. He reveals that Randall was not merely his sibling, but also his associate, and that Randall had previously served as a private contractor. When Kara inquires about Carl's current profession as an instructor, he explains that Randall served as his inspiration to effect positive change. Suddenly, Carl receives a communication from Joel, who informs him of the recent occurrences. Joel states that he deployed a decoy vehicle, and Dante and Mace were apprehended with it. He invites Carl to speculate on the vehicle's ultimate destination. Carl readily agrees to meet. Carl expresses his gratitude to Kara and departs, though it is evident she wishes he would prolong his stay. Upon their rendezvous, Joel indicates the location where the stolen vehicle was conveyed. Carl is inclined to act with haste, but Joel advises prudence, suggesting that the ensuing day will be of even greater significance. He then plays a recording for Carl of the gang, discussing their scheme to neutralize Carl. The following day, Carl arrives at the school exhibiting no outward signs of perturbation. Dante greets him with sarcasm, referring to him as the individual with the educational strategies. Carl merely smiles and commences his instruction. One student with a fractured limb feigns illness and requests permission to use the restroom. He secretly departs to admit gang members through the rear entrance. Within the classroom, Mace is broadcasting music at a high volume through his radio, disregarding Carl's directives. Following multiple admonitions, Carl resolves to impart a disciplinary lesson. He informs the class that if he permits Mace to continue playing music while he endeavors to instruct, no party will achieve victory. This is referred to as a stalemate, with a situation that has no apparent resolution. Consequently, in the absence of any compromise, Carl then propels Mace's radio out the window. The entire class abruptly falls silent. Mace becomes incensed and brandishes a knife, displaying his proficiency, but Carl easily disarms him and confiscates the weapon. Carl clarifies that his intention is not to humiliate anyone. He simply desires for the class to comprehend that he is in command and aims to assist them. He then mentions that Kayshawn, the student who departed for the restroom, has not returned. Therefore, Carl decides to investigate. In the boys' lavatory, Carl calls out for Khan and commences a search. Abruptly, gang members materialize behind him, but thanks to Joel's warning, Carl is prepared. He employs his skills to subdue them individually. Returning to the classroom, Kayshawn overhears the commotion and enters with exhilaration. He informs the others that Carl is likely being subjected to a beating, but Mace refrains from participating. He remains contemplative of Carl's prior statement. In the lavatory, Carl continues the altercation. Utilizing his comprehensive training, he incapacitates one of the gang members and demands to know if he is the individual responsible for Randall Thompson's demise. Just as the confrontation concludes, Carl calmly adjusts his tie and reinstates his timepiece. Suddenly, the janitor he previously encountered enters and commends Carl's combat prowess. The janitor introduces himself as Jonathan Barty. He expresses that he has never witnessed an instructor engage in combat in such a manner and recognizes Carl's maneuvers as those employed by the Green Berets. Jonathan explains that he served in the 1st Battalion during the years 1971 and 1972, and he is certain that the assailants were not genuine students. Someone must have granted them entry. He also informs Carl that he is evidently more than a mere secondary school instructor. 4630 to 4636. I am engaged in a sacred endeavor. Damnation, I suspected as much. You are operating undercover. Jonathan offers to manage the situation and instructs Carl to return to his classroom. He also requests that Carl meet him in the basement at a later time. Back in the classroom, Carl enters as if nothing has transpired and observes Kashan as the focal point of attention. He checks on Kashan's well-being, but the other students regard him with skeptical glances for fabricating the incident. Oh yes, I believe we were discussing the merits of force versus compromise. Upon the conclusion of the class, Carl requests Mace to remain behind. He inquires if the radio was costly, and Mace affirms that it was only moderately so. Carl expresses his belief that Mace possesses the capacity to reform his life, but Mace becomes indignant and inquires how Carl could possibly comprehend anything about his existence. He discloses that his father is incarcerated, his brother was slain, and he has no knowledge of his mother's whereabouts. He asserts that the gang represents his sole affiliation. Carl listens attentively and informs him that he still possesses the agency to select a different trajectory. Mace, exhibiting distress, returns the yo-yo Carl had given him and departs. Later, Kashan and his associates return to the lavatory to observe the aftermath, but everything has already been restored to order. Kashan insists that Carl engage in combat with the gang, but his companions remain unconvinced. Subsequently, Carl convenes with Jonathan in the subterranean level. Jonathan reveals his living quarters and displays a private collection of artifacts from his military tenure. Carl expresses admiration for Jonathan's commitment and respect for his service. During their dialogue, Carl opens up and discloses that he is endeavoring to locate the individual who murdered his brother, Randall. They share a carbonated beverage as Jonathan mentions hearing peculiar sounds during the nighttime. He indicates that individuals enter and exit without authorization, but each time he investigates, no one is present. Carl proposes that they investigate collectively with an additional confidant. Later that day, Anna is walking homeward when she is accosted by members of the Brotherhood gang. They issue threats informing her that she must dissuade Carl from delving into their affairs. They instruct her to feign ignorance of their conversation and leave her in a state of fear on the thoroughfare. That night, she confides in Carl. He advises her to remain at home for the ensuing few days. She expresses her displeasure but acquiesces. That night, Carl, Joel, and Jonathan convene at the educational institution to investigate the unusual sounds. They decide to cautiously inspect the garage, and Jonathan guides them through a concealed passage. Carl proceeds ahead and discovers Warren and several students engaged in automotive repair. It is evident they are involved in illicit activities. Carl returns and informs the others that Warren is operating a vehicle dismantling operation. They deduce that Warren disassembles 3 or 4 automobiles weekly, disposing of the components below market value. They estimate his monthly earnings exceed $100,000. Meanwhile, Warren receives a telephone call from Dante. He relays that the police have discovered one of their pilfered vehicles and that a pursuit ensued. However, the most significant issue is that Mace is deceased. When you speak of apprehending Mace, the brother is deceased. Mace is deceased. Warren exhibits no discernible reaction to Mace's demise. The subsequent morning, Carl assembles the students and observes their expressions of sorrow. Dante is conspicuously absent from this collective grief. He states that Mace assumed a risk and faced the repercussions. Carl expresses disagreement. He asserts that school is not a combat arena and that no student should perish. Dante counters that the reality of the world is a battlefield, and individuals like him must strive for every acquisition. No one bestows anything upon them gratuitously, as Carl might have benefited. We must contend for every possession we obtain, as no one will simply bestow them upon us as they might have provided them to you. Dante declares that the authorities were responsible for Mace's death, not him. However, Carl suspects Dante played a role in Randall's demise, though Dante is unaware of this implication. Following the school day, Carl visits Kara and inquires about Warren's true character. Kara describes Warren as well-regarded within the school, but externally as cold and domineering. She admits that he once expressed romantic interest in her, but she declined his advances due to his possessive disposition. The following day, during a school recess, Carl approaches Kara and quietly requests her to investigate Warren's background and prior employment. While they converse, Warren observes them from a distance, his expression one of suspicion. Later that day, while Carl is at his residence with Joey, Kara telephones. She announces that she has uncovered information online and requests Carl to visit her. Carl informs her that he and Joey are en route. Before their departure, they instruct Anna not to admit any visitors. However, at Kara's residence, someone knocks shortly thereafter. She opens the door and expresses surprise upon seeing Warren holding provisions. He states he was merely in the vicinity. Kara senses a lack of security, so she conceals the document she intended to present to Carl. Warren continues his discourse, feigning only a desire for amiable interaction. "We are engaged in this minor rivalry you have initiated. Impart knowledge concerning him." Meanwhile, Anna discreetly departs the residence to visit Danny. He welcomes her inside, and they spend time in his room. Danny attempts to advance their intimacy with undue haste, despite Anna's preference for a gradual progression. When he steps into the bathroom, she surveys the surroundings and notices a condom on the surface, causing her discomfort. Then a startling event occurs. She discovers her father's police identification card within Danny's drawer. Perplexed and apprehensive, she conducts a more thorough search and uncovers the Brotherhood gang attire within his wardrobe. She hastily dresses to depart, but Danny re-enters the room. "Danny, where did you procure this?" "His name." Anna confronts him and questions whether he was responsible for her father's death. Danny attempts an explanation, asserting that her father was interfering with the Brotherhood's financial assets. As their dispute escalates, Danny seizes a knife, but Anna possesses knowledge of karate. She delivers a forceful kick and shatters a glass object over his head. Danny attempts to apprehend her once more, but she eludes his grasp. Back at Kara's abode, Warren suddenly assaults her. He propels her across the room, revealing his genuinely violent nature. He accuses her of obstructing his endeavors and strikes her multiple times. He desires to ascertain Carl's true intentions. Finally, Kara informs him that Carl is Randall's sibling. He is Randall Thomas's brother. She attempts to retreat upstairs, but Warren pursues her and inflicts further blows repeatedly. He then discharges his firearm, causing her instantaneous demise. Following this, Warren instructs his subordinates to eliminate Carl and to disregard any further directives. As he exits the structure, he observes Carl and Joey arriving. Warren conceals himself, awaiting an opportune moment. Fortunately, Carl and Joey fail to perceive him. Inside, Carl is devastated to discover Kara deceased. He also locates the file she intended to present to him. It indicates that Warren was a former agent of the United States Marine Corps. He was honorably discharged, but under specific circumstances. He was suspected of undertaking clandestine operations in Honduras during 1986. He denied all allegations and subsequently received commendations in 1987. At home, Anna informs Carl of her discoveries. She states that Danny was the individual who implicated her and that he is the perpetrator. Danny claimed he acted solely to demonstrate his significance to Warren. That night, Carl retrieves his weaponry, prepared to conclude matters. Joey picks him up, and they proceed toward the high school. Joey reports observing 2 full vehicles of gang members and inquires if Carl is prepared. 2 cars. Are you prepared? Morning. Prepared. Let us proceed. The gang arrives shortly thereafter. They enter the school armed with firearms and rifles, intending to eliminate the substitute instructor. Carl and Joey rendezvous with Jonathan, who opens the gate for them, but the gang is already in pursuit, and a firefight erupts. The school transforms into a combat zone. Several gang members sustain significant injuries, but Carl, Joey, and Jonathan remain unharmed. They relocate to another chamber and secure the door behind them. Joey reveals he has sustained a gunshot wound, and it appears they are cornered. "Yes, we must reach the other side of the corridor. Why did you escort us into this location? Because they were firing upon us." "No." Carl surveys his surroundings and notices a fuel tank. He promptly devises a strategy. He positions the tank adjacent to the doorway, and when the gang recommences firing, the tank detonates, repelling them further down the hallway. This provides the trio an opportunity to escape. Jonathan guides them through a subterranean passage to a concealed chamber where he stores antiquated weaponry. They rearm and prepare for the subsequent assault. The gang persists in their advance, but they are now sustaining greater casualties. Following an extensive and taxing exchange of gunfire, Jonathan deploys smoke grenades. At this juncture, the gang leader emerges. As the smoke dissipates, Carl apprehends the leader, while Joey and Jonathan engage the remaining combatants. Amidst the confusion, the gang inadvertently discharges their own leader. In another chamber, Carl confronts the wounded leader, who confesses that Warren Drummond, the mechanic instructor, is the mastermind behind the entire operation. Carl proceeds without delay to Warren's classroom. He interrupts the instruction and demands that Warren admit to committing Kara's murder. He also mentions that Kara's final testament exposes the truth concerning him. Warren, taken aback and apprehensive, attempts to deny all involvement. Rather than admitting the truth, Warren informs the students about Carl's past as a private contractor. He then attempts to open a briefcase to retrieve a firearm. However, Carl is prepared and intervenes before he can utilize it. A fierce confrontation ensues. Both combatants, seasoned and perilous, were engaged in a fierce confrontation. Warren, attempting to arm himself with a flame-generating device, had it forcefully dislodged by Carl after multiple unsuccessful attempts, followed by a swift kick to Warren's countenance. Despite Warren's retaliatory efforts, Carl retaliated by seizing a glass orb and pressing it forcefully against Warren's ocular cavity, inflicting severe impairment. Observing the struggle from a distance, the assembled pupils remained indecisive regarding their allegiances, as Warren, unyielding, persisted in his resistance. Carl repeatedly asserted dominance, forcefully driving Warren into the earth. Concurrently, from an elevated vantage point, Anna surveyed the scene and promptly descended to render assistance to her relation. The engagement intensified, with both individuals deploying their full array of capabilities. At a critical juncture, Warren procured a pointed metallic instrument and inflicted a puncture wound upon Carl's upper limb. Despite the agony, Carl retaliated with considerable force. The students scrutinized the exchange with heightened attention, contemplating the possibility of a fatal injury to Carl. Yet he managed to regain his footing. Ultimately, Carl delivered a decisive thrust with the sharpened tool into Warren's abdominal region, bringing his existence to a close. A pervasive silence enveloped the onlookers, with no apparent expression of grief for Warren. Following a brief period of stillness, Anna and Joey approached Carl, expressing their gratitude for his actions. Jonathan applauded, directing the students to resume their academic pursuits, thus concluding the spectacle. As the crowd dispersed, Dante exhibited an uncharacteristic display of compassion, suggesting to Carl that he appeared in need of medical attention and a respite. In the final analysis, a sense of resolution seemed to prevail. Carl conveyed his appreciation to Joey for his steadfast support throughout the ordeal. Subsequently, Carl and Anna paid a visit to Randall's final resting place. They deposited floral tributes in Randall's official insignia. Anna informed Carl of her intention to retain the residence and extended an invitation for him to remain. But Carl, expressing pride in her, stated his necessity to depart. They embraced with palpable warmth, marking the conclusion of the cinematic presentation.